Joining us today is a special guest, Judy Pardo. Judy Pardo is a licensed counselor, a trainer for parent effectiveness training, and I'll let Chris tell everybody more about parent effectiveness training.
Sure, Steve. So, as you know, I've got a daughter. She's 7 years old. When I first started to raise her, I was using the same methods that were used on me. I thought that was just how parenting was done. And my parents were very much authoritarian style, very, typical of what you think of when people talk about parenting, when you see parenting out and about in America. And I really wasn't happy with it. It wasn't very effective for one thing, and it just didn't make me feel good. My daughter wasn't happy, and I started exploring alternatives. And I discovered more methods of peaceful parenting, and to not spanking, to try to use negotiation and things like that. But while this was certainly better than what I was doing before, I was having trouble implementing the philosophy. I think I had found the right philosophy, but I hadn't found the methods to really implement it and be successful. And so I was still having a lot of problems. What would happen is when I would hit any kind of trouble, I would fall back to my old style, the style that was used on me, the authoritarian style, that just was not working. And several people I had seen that had recommended parent effectiveness training. Stefan Molyneux, who is a guest on parenting recently, had recommended it. Pete Gerlach, who is a guest we're going to have on in a few weeks, in his work, I saw his recommended reading was Parent Effectiveness Training. So I read it, and then it blew me away when reading it, and I started using it, and instantly was effective. And I said, now I found a method that pairs with the philosophy. Since then, I feel like my parenting has gone to a whole new level. I guess instead of talking about my experiences right now, I want to get Judy to start talking about it. Judy works, for Gordon Training International, where they have training courses using the same philosophies, the same methods that are discussed in the book, Parent Effectiveness Training, and she helps parents. So, Judy, how long have you been working with Gordon Training, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, of course not. First, thanks for having me on your program. I wanted to say that I listened to your parenting podcasts with Kathy and Todd Adams, also with Stefan, and found them really interesting. And I think we share a lot of the same ideas. Not all, but a
Right.
lot. Was trained as an instructor with Gordon Training over 20 years ago. So we're all independents, right? I don't work for them, right? But I've been certified as an instructor with them. Actually, I'm here in New York City, and my primary work is as a psychotherapist in private practice, and I also give the parenting workshops, work with parents. So I've been doing this for quite a while, and actually came upon it much the same way you did, Chris, because when my son was around 2, I had the same experience of, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
Or I know what I'm doing, but it's not what I want to be doing. And took a workshop with a certified P.E.T. instructor, and thought it was just the perfect thing, exactly what I wanted, and then shortly thereafter became an instructor myself.
Well, that's fantastic. Why don't you go ahead and give us, a general overview of what the philosophy is behind the PET method?
Sure. First of all, it was developed by Thomas Gordon back in 1962. At this point, there are about 7 million people all around the world who've been trained to use these skills. And it's really a system of communication where you're learning specific skills and techniques to cover situations that are part of everyday life. It's really communication with everyone in your life. With PET, Parent Effectiveness Training, it's geared toward parents, but the skill set is really the same. Whether I've taught PET, I've taught effectiveness training and leadership skills, the same communication skills. It's just that the focus and the examples are different.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that jumped out to me when I was reading PET is I said, you know what, this is just good communication practice for anyone.
That's right.
And I've always found, like, I had read several parenting books. None of them were that great. And in fact, the best, until I had read P.E.T, the best parenting book I had read was Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yes.
And I'm like, this is the only one that's giving me anything that's working. All the other ones are not working. And of course, that's not, specialized for parenting. It's just a general, book on
Right.
communication. So,
Well, I
yeah,
think one of the things to me is that when you're dealing with parenting philosophies that see parents and children as different, right away I have a problem, because children are fully formed people, right? They have thoughts, they have feelings, they're the same as us. They just lack experience, right? Maybe they lack education and experience. But in terms of being human, as human beings on this earth, they're the same.
they're just size deficient.
They may be size deficient, but the thing with Thomas Gordon is I think that was part of his credo, part of his message. And parent effectiveness training is really based, it's that system of communication, and it's based on open and honest communication, direct communication, mutual respect, right? That everyone has the right to get their basic needs met. It's really a democratic system. There's no place for power or authority in that. So it really values the individual, and the individual as an autonomous being at whatever age. And I think that's probably the most important part, right? That's really their philosophy, his philosophy, where it all comes from.
Right. And I think that's why so many people struggle with children. That you had mentioned twos when there started to be trouble, and people always mention the terrible twos, because until then the child wasn't really able to express himself. But as soon as he starts to express himself, all of a sudden he or she realizes they're in this situation, in most families that aren't using PET practice, where they're like second-class citizens. Their needs and wants are secondary to the parents.
And they're secondary really to every adult or older person in the world.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Parents, teachers, shopkeepers, everybody they meet feels they have the right to tell them what to do, how to speak, that they have power over them.
Right. And so the child will sit there and say, I have a need. And the parent or the other adult will say, your need's not important. I have my needs. That's what's important. And they're like shocked when this child rebels, and then the child gets angry and the situation escalates, where if other people, another adult treated you that same way, of course, you would have a very bad relationship with that person,
That's right. One of the things I try to, one of the ways I use when I teach the workshop is to say, would you treat your friend this way? Would you speak to your, is this the way you would speak to another person in your life? I mean, I think you're also pointing out one of the basics in PET is that very often in our society, we think that in order for us to get what we want, it means that somebody else can't get what they want. Right? We're based on win-lose, right? Lose-win, win-lose. We're not based on
Right.
win-win.
Yeah, I agree. So that's kind of the philosophy behind it. Let's see. I know, we're only doing, about a 30-minute show today. We wouldn't be able to give the listeners as much as they would get from going to a workshop with you or reading the book. But let's see if we can give them an idea of some of the things that would be in there. One of the things that's, one of the first chapters in the book that I was able to very instantly implement it and have had great results. It's relieved a lot of stress in my life and stress in my daughter's life is there's an emphasis put on determining whose responsibility a problem is. A child will come to you and say, he's frustrated because their sibling isn't sharing toys or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Most parents immediately step in, say, all right, Tommy, share with your brother. Billy,
Right.
you do that. They just take over. Where, well, wait a minute, that's not necessarily your responsibility. The child, So why don't you talk about that?
Okay. I want to say that the whole schematic, like briefly with PET, is you think there's a piece in the book called the behavior window. The idea that when you look out of your window at the world, you see everyone and either you like what they're doing, you don't like what they're doing, and then you determine, is it acceptable to you, is it not acceptable to you? And one of the first things that sometimes parents have difficulty with is seeing just what you said, when their child has a problem, realizing that that's not their problem. It's the child's problem, right? So if the child wants the brother to give them the toy and they're not getting it, they have a problem. One of the reasons that it's important to first discern whose problem it is because then you're going to know what skill to use. P.E.T. and the skills you use, I think of it like a carpenter having a tool chest. So if you need, if you use a chainsaw where you need a screwdriver, it's not going to work.
Right.
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 So the reason that you want to know whose problem it is really to know what skill to use. So if, go away, we're saying, okay, you have a problem. I want to help you. I would like to be able to help you to solve your own problem. And that is key. That I don't want to solve the problems for my kids or for anyone else in the world. I want to help them learn how to solve their own problems. And we're going to teach, and that's where the active and passive listening skills come in that we use to help someone, in this case the child, solve their own problem. So that's why figuring out whose problem it is critical in the beginning.
Right. And again, that's something that applies to any situation.
Absolutely.
I'm a manager in my day job. I look at my job is to help my subordinates solve their own problems. I'm not going to when they have a problem, I'm not going to step in and solve it for them. But if there's a roadblock in the way, or if I can help them, if I know of a resource that they can use that would assist them, then I will put that out there for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to solve their problem for them. And what I will do is I don't tell them, even if I know I can help, I will not tell them this is how you have to do it to solve this problem. I'm not solving it for them. I will just put it out there and say, here's a resource for you that you could use if you wanted to solve this problem.
That's right. So
and let them make the decision.
That education information is neutral, right?
Right.
But I think also what parents often a phrase that it's interesting in one of your podcasts when I think it was Kathy and Todd talking about it's simple but not easy. And one of the phrases that I think of often with parents is well-meaning but misguided.
Right.
Are solving your child's problem. This is a misguided notion that you're helping them because really you're robbing them of the opportunity to solve their own problem and to become independent individuals who can feel confident that whatever life throws in their way, they'll be able to solve it, whether it's to get help from someone else or, talk about it with someone or get a resource. But the whole idea is, to take the philosophy that we share and put it into practice. I mean, it's very practical. It's skills, techniques, ways to speak. Nothing's perfect, but this is the best chance you have for getting the results. And also what I think is key is the times when there are no problems, how you can talk to your kids and anyone during those times to expand the no problem area so you have fewer and fewer problems and more harmony in the family.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed since I've started thinking more about it when my child is talking to me, is she asking for my help? That's one thing. Or is she just talking about it, that she has a problem? And if so, is this my problem or hers? And then letting her do her own. One thing I've noticed is often, at least initially, I had kind of conditioned my daughter because I would so often step in to solve problems. I conditioned her to not solve them herself and to come to me.
Mm-hmm.
And she would come to me and she would be asking me for help. I would say to myself, this really is something she should just be doing on her own. And so what I do, and since she asked for help, I would offer, but I would show her ways that she could do it herself. And I would tell her all the time, this is something you can do on your own. You don't need me to do it. You go ahead and do it. And I'm sure you can. And now if you have questions or whatever, I'll answer the questions, but I know you can do this on your own. You're very smart. You're very capable. And initially, there were times my daughter would say, really? You think I could do this on my own? You think I'm
Mm-hmm.
capable? And to me, I'm inside of, on one hand, my heart was breaking a little bit that realizing that in the past I wasn't giving that message. I was I was projecting the message, you're not capable of doing this. I have to do it for you. And on the other, I was also very happy that thank goodness I figured this out and can
Oh,
now,
yeah,
there's nothing I can do about the past, but at least going
right.
forward. And
But
since then, I've found she may still complain about things that are going on, but it's not coming to me asking me for help. It's just, oh, I'm having this problem, and I will let her take that on her own.
I think that's great. I mean, we're back to, you can't, unless you're aware of unless you're aware that there's a problem, you're not going to be able to have a solution, right? So once people realize, oh, first of all, also, once you realize that solving your child's problem is really taking that opportunity away from them and sort of giving them a vote of no confidence. But there's also a secondary benefit for parents, because you don't have to come up with lots of solutions. You don't have to sit there trying to figure out how to solve everything. You can take that off your plate. You can say to the child that you're going to listen to them. And I like what you said in terms of, I hear you want my help, but I really think you can do this, or you can solve this on your own. If you have a question or this or that, I'm here, but I have confidence that you can solve it. And I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, and I mean, you're building your child's confidence while at the same time relieving a great load of stress from your life. I mean, I can speak from experience. This was instantly effective for me. Instantly relieved a significant amount of stress from my life.
There's
And
go ahead.
And I think that's one of the great things about PET when I discovered it was how quickly you could implement it. I mean, it didn't solve all my problems instantly,
Right.
but boy, did I start getting paid back right away. I mean, literally, 2 or 3 chapters in, and then, start applying it and getting, seeing results. So.
I know I had one instance with my own son early on where it's many, many lessons in humility. He brought to me a situation where three friends were going to buy one thing together and share it. And in my mind, I immediately thought, oh, you can't do that. That's not going to work, right?
Right.
And I caught myself and said, Judy, stay out of it. First, he was asking me, what do I think? And I just listened. But of course, I knew that this can't possibly work, right? So, but I say nothing. The 3 kids, they're maybe like 8 years old. They buy whatever. They have it together. Months go by, and I say to him, whatever happened with that thing? He's like, oh, yeah, we got tired of it, and he wanted it, so we gave it to him.
Yeah.
It's like, really, there was no problem. There was
Right.
no problem. And if I had interjected, I would have made this a problem, right? There was a time when my son accepted an invitation to a birthday party, and then got an invitation to another birthday party, and he wanted to go to that one. Right? Now, you could easily jump in and say, well, the right thing to do, and I stayed out of it. He solved the whole thing. The friend who he accepted totally understood why he wanted to go to the other party and not his. He was fine with it. They all worked it out. Another lesson in humility, and the fact that I don't have all the answers. Right?
Right. Yeah, that's a great point.
When you can stand back and really allow the other person to go through their process and have respect for that and have confidence that they'll solve it if they don't solve it. I mean, also hard for parents at times is to not even know how the problem is going to be solved. Right?
Right.
But sometimes you'll actively listen and they'll be done and there's no resolution.
Right.
They're okay. They've done enough. They're okay. Right? They may be okay with not having a solution. So it's very interesting. It really gives you a whole other dimension. But I think you have to come from the place of mutual respect. As I said, to start, that your children, they're fully formed. They know a lot more about themselves than you do. And you can the other thing is that the whole thing, power, when we think that the only way we're going to be able to influence our children or get them to do what we want is through power, you can do that. You can make them do what you want. But the big thing for me is the relationship, because you have the potential for a lifelong relationship with your children. And when you use power, you could end up in a situation where as soon as they can get out of the house, they want to run away.
Right. Yeah, and I think when you have to use power to force someone to do something. It's not a good feeling. You damage the relationship, so you're losing. Here's a person who you could have one of the most special relationships in the world. With. You're damaging that relationship, and you're feeling awful while you're doing it because
right.
I mean, very few people. When I know. When I was authoritarian, it was very stressful when you would sit there and be yelling at my child, and I see it with other parents that still use the authoritarian style. They're just like wiped out, and they're like, oh, what a terrible day.
Right.
My child wasn't doing this, and this, and I had to, I feel like a terrible parent. So the parent is very unhappy doing it, and you're also, you're building this person. You're not helping the child to develop. You're hurting their development. You're making them less self-confident, giving them, there's all kinds of things that can happen when you use the authoritarian style, giving them
Yes.
Issues with authority.
Mm-hmm.
When giving them issues with criticism and all kinds of things that can come
Right.
out of this.
Right.
So one of the things that I find interesting about the P.E.T method is you had said how there was humility, seeing that your son could solve these problems on his own, better than you could.
Right.
And how there's solutions you had not even thought of.
That's right.
And that's a theme that there's many examples in the book that are like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me very much of kind of libertarian philosophy. In our podcast, we cover many topics besides parenting, and we've talked a lot about politics.
Yes.
And a very much a libertarian idea is you don't want a central authority, in that case the government, trying to solve problems for people, because then you're really restricting the ability of the masses to solve problems on their own, and they can be very creative and come up with ways that are much better than the central authority. And you see this where there's all these inefficiencies in the government, when the private sector can perform the tasks that the government does, services that the government does, much cheaper, much more effective. Of course, they're innovative. There's very little innovation in the government, and it reminds me of the structure of the home. The parent is the central authority to this government, where, and if they're the government gets you to behave through force. If you disobey the law, that you might get a fine. Or they come, or they use, the police force. If you don't pay the fine, then they come with guns. One way or another, it's the enforcement falls back to power. Having a gun.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's one of the things. Being kind of libertarian leaning. This meshed well with me.
Right.
And I've seen actually people discuss the style of parenting we're talking about, discussing it as libertarian parenting. But so with that in mind, I was wondering if you've noticed, you've been doing the P.E.T method for 20 years, is there some parents that this is more effective with, and then others that maybe for one reason or another it's not effective? And is there a relationship to political leanings and also of the children as they grow up? Is there? I mean, I don't know if Gordon International Training has done any demographic studies of what the political leanings are of the children that were raised in this manner, or the parents that. But what is your experience for that?
It's a very interesting question. I don't have the answer. But I would say, rather than looking at it politically, I could generalize to say that in order for someone to want to learn these skills, they have to be pretty open-minded, and they have to be somewhat self-reflective, because it's really admitting that you may not be doing what you think is the best thing, right? So there has to be, I guess, some humility to start with, even just to say, you know, I don't like the way I'm parenting, or I don't like the way I'm feeling with when I'm parenting my children. So there has to be some openness there and willingness to look at another possibility. I have worked with people who will, sometimes if I have couple come together, one is more inclined than the other. But more often than not, it's people who realize that what they're doing is just not working for them. And usually people either do the opposite of what was done to them, right? They go either one way or the other way. If it was authoritarian, they're going to go completely the other way. If there were no boundaries, they're going to become authoritarian, and neither way works, right? So with PET, it really is about that democratic model, right? That you're all equals, and as I said to begin with, that children are just, as you said, smaller and lack the education and experience. But in terms of the politics, that's something that I don't get into. I know that Gordon Training does have studies on the effectiveness of PET, and that's something that they have research. If you go to their website, gordontraining.com, there's a lot of research.
So how is that measured? How do they determine that it's been effective?
Well, they're doing sampling, I think, over time with the children children who've taken the PET, and then they see how they differ from children who haven't taken PET. When I say taken PET, who haven't been brought up with parents. So that's part of it. We'll have psychologists, sociologists who will do studies. One other thing I want to mention, which I think is very exciting, is that Gordon Training is working on a specific program for effectiveness training to use with children. So to teach children the skills in a group, which I think could be wonderful.
Wow, that sounds great.
I mean, I know they have it for teachers as well. And I've worked with some teachers to teach them the skills. But the biggest thing is that when people put in the time, like learning anything else that's new, it makes life so much easier that I think that's what keeps people coming back for more, because their lives get easier. The problems melt away. You're having conversations. You're not having arguments. People are talking about things. You're preventing problems through communication.
Right.
Directly, so that, it's a beautiful thing to see. Especially, I know people whose children were, let's say, 4 years old when I started, and now they're through grad school. And I see the relationship that they have with them, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, that's really neat. So let's see if we can talk about some more of the actual methods listed, and just kind of give a touch on one or two of them before we close it up. One of the things that I also was able to implement right away that was very effective, and I've mentioned it a few times now, is active listening. Why don't you tell us what active listening is?
Okay, active listening is a skill that you're going to use when you want to help someone else who has a problem, right? So if someone comes to you with a problem, the most helpful way to go is to use active and passive listening. Passive listening is when you're paying attention and you're going, with sure, wow, right? You're just indicating you're still there. Active listening is a skill where you're going to feed back to the person your understanding of what they said in your own words, and you're going to feed it back both in the words, the content, but also the emotional quality, right? So if someone came and said, I hate school, I hate it, you're going to say, wow, you had the worst day today at school, right? So you're feeding back what you've heard in your own words, matching the emotions. What it does is it's almost like it provides a mirror to the person. They get to hear what they just said, and in hearing it, they then get to go to the next point. sometimes with active listening, it starts out with I hate school, and I think this is mentioned in this book. It ends up with I'm unpopular and I don't know how to talk to people, right?
Right.
When you hear yourself, the person can say, well, once you said, wow, this was the worst day, well, I don't really hate school, but I didn't like the science class, right? And then you say, oh, so it was science, not all of school. Oh, yeah, science was horrible. But it was really the teacher who, and then you go, the person is able to sort of peel back those layers and often get to what core issue is that they wouldn't have known initially, right?
Right. What I've found with active listening is it's very it diffuses these strong emotions. So my daughter will be very upset about something, and it's an acknowledgement. Like before that, a lot of times, I might try to downplay it or not acknowledge it or not, and it would just escalate. You'd say you're not upset, and so she'd say, "Oh, you think I'm not upset? Well, I'm going to show you how upset I am," and just keep escalating.
Right, because you're not understanding her, so she has to keep upping the ante till you really get it.
Right. So, and I would see this a very an easy way to an easy scenario to explain this, or to an example that I think a lot of people would really see is just a child falls down and scrapes their knee, and they're like, "Ah, that hurt," and they're maybe a little over the top, but and the parent says, "You are not hurt. Shake it off." And they're like, "No, it really hurt. Look at the blood," and they're just screaming, and you're like, "Oh my God, please, it's just a little. What are you, a baby?" And this goes on, and they just keep escalating. And now, if my daughter hurts herself somehow, I'm like, "Oh, you really hurt yourself. Oh, that looked like it really hurt," and just acknowledge what it is, and it's like instantly, instead of the screaming just disappears, she's like, "Yeah, that did hurt," and it just totally diffuses the situation. It's just like she just needs to be acknowledged.
That's right.
That she has those feelings,
right. And I have a very a story from one of my first workshops about this when I'm teaching the skills, and there's a woman, she's has her son in the car and picks up her daughter. Her daughter's in the car seat. She's about 3 years old. And this daughter starts saying, "I want to go to McDonald's." And the mom said, I want to go to McDonald's. Mom said, "No, we can't today, but maybe we'll go another." "No, I want to go to McDonald's." Mom, "No, not today, because we have to go straight home, because we have to do this." And the kid keeps escalating. Now she's shrieking, "I want to go to McDonald's." And she says, "I want to go to McDonald's. I'm not going to stop telling you this until you take me to McDonald's. I want to go to McDonald's." And finally, the mother, the P.E.T. light bulb clicked in, and she said to her, "You really want to go to McDonald's right now?" And the kid said, "That's right." And that was the end of it.
Yeah.
Picked up her little toy and started playing. And the mother came in and reported this to the class, right? And everyone was cheering. And I said, this is the ideal. But it can happen that she just wanted to be heard. She just wanted to be acknowledged and heard and validated. That's what she needed. She got it. And that was it. That was the end of saying, "I want to go to McDonald's."
Yeah, I've seen it. I remember the first time I did active listening. I read the chapter. My daughter was upset about something, and I just repeated it. I don't remember the specific situation, unfortunately, but I just, I used the active listening and repeated it back to her. And instantly she's like, yeah, it was like totally diffused, Right. Yeah, okay. And she went about her day. It was just, I was like, oh my, it's like,
right.
Sometimes it's like magic. It is so, it's not always that effective. Sometimes you have to stick with it and work through the few steps, and
I would say it differently. I would say it's always effective, but you may not get the results that quickly.
Right.
But the listening, I think what you said before is really important, Chris, because the first thing when someone has a problem where their emotions are very high is to help diffuse the emotions. And when you listen and acknowledge, it helps to diffuse the emotions, because we all know that when you're in a rage or you're really upset, you can't really make a decision or solve your problem then. You have to calm down first. So the active listening really helps someone to calm down, because there's someone else with them who cares, who wants to understand, who wants to help, is listening. The emotional temperature can kind of go down, and then you can get into whatever it is that's going on with them and listen and help them by active listening to figure out for themselves how to solve the problem, if they even want to solve it. Sometimes all they want is for the emotions to go down and they're done.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're trying to solve a problem while if you're in that heat of that moment when the person's all upset, you're just spinning your wheels.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
it's completely it's a waste of time, and well, it's worse than that because it just makes the situation worse.
That's right. It adds
It's very
to
right.
very often.
So and it's very stressful on both sides for both parties. You know.
Oh,
So
yeah.
let's talk about one last thing before we close it up. If you've got a few minutes, do you have a few more?
Hmm.
Um, I found there's something in P.E.T. They call it sending I messages instead of you messages.
Right.
Go ahead and give a quick description of that, and then I'll share my experience.
Okay. So now I have a situation where something's happening perhaps that I don't like, right? So rather than saying, okay, so we're sitting together and there you are, it looks like your cup is at the edge of the table, it's about to fall over, and I'm afraid that it's gonna go, spill onto my white carpet, right?
Sure.
So I could say to you, you need to move your cup. It's gonna spill, right? Now I'm telling you what to do. And you might say, no, it's not, it's fine. Right? Now,
Right.
right? So I'm going to say instead, you know what, Chris, your cup, I'm really nervous that your cup is at the edge, and it's really making me nervous that I'm thinking it might spill. Very different, very different. You might, in that situation, say, oh, I'll move it back, right?
Mhm.
I tell you in a situation with also you message or telling somebody what to do. I'm sitting with my son, he's young, at the table, and he is tilting his chair back, right? So now the chair is, instead of on four legs, is on two legs.
Right.
And I say, you need to stop tilting your chair. Don't tilt your chair. Don't tilt your chair. You're going to fall. You're going to fall. And he keeps saying, I'm not going to fall. I'm not going to fall. And I keep saying, you're going to fall. Till finally, and this is in the early P.E.T. days of mine, I said, you know, I really am scared that you're going to fall off your chair. I know you're not going to fall, but I'm so concerned that you're going to fall, and I have myself already carrying you to the hospital, with down your head. I can't enjoy my meal.
Right.
He stopped instantly. He said, oh, all right. He never tilted his chair again. So huge difference when you're telling someone what to do versus telling them what is going on with you, right? I'm having a problem with this. I can't concentrate because you're tapping your fingers. I need to do my work and the music is too loud, so it's making it hard for me to concentrate. All of this stuff where, in the past we were taught not to talk about yourself. Don't say I this, I that. That's very egotistical. Well, this is saying own it. Take responsibility.
Right.
What the person is doing may not bother anyone else. But if it bothers you, then you get to say, I'm bothered by that. And very often, children and others will want to be helpful and accommodating.
Right. So there's a couple things I really like about sending iMessages. One is obvious. It's much more effective. You messages are terribly ineffective. Even if you do get the child, you say, stop going on taking your chair on two legs. Maybe they actually do stop, but then they're grumbling about it the whole time. Oh, bossy mom, always got to have her way, and it's like, oh, can we just have a peaceful meal, So they're much more effective. But the other thing, beyond just that, there's two things I really like. One is it forces you to be more self-aware,
Yes.
which is a good thing. You have to say, okay, you have to check your own thermostat. Where are my emotions at? And because I need to put a name on them in order to be able to accurately convey this, to my child. So it encourages you to be self-aware because a lot of people go through the day and their emotions are all over the place and they have no awareness to it. And that's affecting their decisions all along the way. I'm acting this way because I'm angry. I'm acting this way because I'm frustrated or sad, and they have no awareness that that's why they're doing it. It's not. The decision is being made because of that, that this primal emotion.
Right.
So that's a very good thing to encourage, self-awareness. And I think that helps you to teach the child that self-awareness too, because you're modeling it.
That's right.
The other thing that I found about iMessages that's a really neat thing, and it was actually mentioned in the book, and I found it to be true, is for me, it's eliminated a lot of the confrontations, a lot of the things that I thought were a problem. Because when I'm getting ready, when I'm forming an iMessage in my mind, something's bothering me, I'll say first there's my emotion. That makes me nervous when you do that. And then there's another part to that, and that's because, you talked about the glass being at the edge of the table. Because, you've got red Kool-Aid and we just put in white carpet. There's got to be some tangible, for me anyway. For me, I'm like, there needs to be some tangible reason that I convey to the child to not do it. I really need you to not play with that noisy toy in this room because I'm working and I can't leave the room. My work is all at this desk. So,
Okay, but I'm going to tweak you a little bit there because
Sure.
it wasn't an iMessage. Because you're telling them what to do. I need you to do this.
Right. That was right. You got me.
Right.
I'm really frustrated because I have to get this work done, and I have to do it in the office because this is where my desktop is, and there's all this noise. And again, I don't put anywhere in there. There's not you making the noise. I try as best as I can, and I just say there's this noise. We all know who's making the noise, but it doesn't need to be said. And it's causing me to not be able to concentrate. So at any rate, I put in. I have to have a tangible thing to put in there because I'm feeling this because. And what I found is a lot of times I really don't have a good because. I would, I'm a little anxious right now because, and then I'm like, well, why am I? And a lot of times I don't really have a good reason. And I say, you know what? If I don't have a good enough reason to put there, then they can just keep on doing it. I don't have a good reason. I'm frustrated because, I'm trying to work and I'm having trouble concentrating, but I can always just take this work and go in the other room. There's nothing stopping me from doing that. Oh, well then why am I even bringing it up? Why don't I just pick up my work and go in the other room? I don't have a good reason. And it eliminates a lot of conflict. It eliminates a lot of strife in your life. It increases the amount of peace in your home, the less you can have to bring up these things.
I agree completely. I think you've mentioned in your example, you've touched on a lot of different things. Consciousness is everything, right? If you're more self-aware, you're going to be better as a person in the world. You're going to be a better parent. I also want to differentiate between an iMessage, which is basically just saying, I like strawberries. That's an iMessage versus a confrontive iMessage in terms of P.E.T. and the skill set, right? Whose problem is it? When you have a problem, which means that your needs are being interfered with, then you want to use a confrontive iMessage, which is the one you were talking about, where you say, this is how I feel. This is how my needs are being interfered with, right? So I'm really frustrated because I need to concentrate on my work and get this report done, and the noise level is too high. So you're really giving the behavior or the situation that the noise level and your feelings that you're frustrated and how your needs are being interfered with. So that's in P.E.T. talk. That would be a 3-part confrontive iMessage that you use when it's your problem, when the parent has the problem. When the parent has the problem, you need to directly address it. When the child has the problem, you want to listen to them to help them solve it. And in the no problem area, you want to give messages to prevent problems, right? To let people know, you know what, tomorrow night, I know I'm going to need it quiet because I have this big presentation that I have to prepare for, right? So people can adjust. But I think what the other thing is, as you say, if you're more conscious and you think things through, you realize, you know what? The easiest thing is for me to modify my own behavior and move to another room if I can do that. If I can't, then maybe I have to say something about it. And I also like, it's not strictly a PET thing, but personally, I love neutral. I love saying things as neutral as possible, because even if you know, my example is, I know I went to sleep first. I know my son went to sleep after me. All the lights are left on. I know it wasn't me. But if I say, you left the lights on,
Right.
I could say, you know what? The lights were left on last night, and it really concerns me because I'm trying to keep, we're talking about ecology and we're talking about electric bill. And when he then says, it wasn't me, I said, I didn't say that. I'm just giving a general reminder for us to turn lights out.
Right.
Neutral is great, and it's good to get into that habit when your kids are young, because it will stand you in good stead as they get older.
I bet.
Want to use the Bart Simpson, it wasn't me, I didn't do it, you didn't see me. Right? So I love that you came on that, and that you use that neutral, because it's not necessary. If you're goal-oriented, what's the difference, right? You don't need to say you did it. Something you want to change, you put it out there in a neutral way, you have a much better chance of getting the results you want. So I'm happy to hear how much you enjoy PET, how much it fits with your style and your philosophy. I think it's great. I mean, I always love giving the workshops. I also teach it individually, because people have busy schedules and erratic schedules, because I feel like you're helping not just one person. It really is that person and their whole world, their children, and really everyone else in their world. Because once you start looking at things and taking these things into account, you start speaking differently and thinking differently.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the work you're doing is fantastic, and it's I mean, it sounds cheesy, but I mean, you're making the world a better place by doing this.
Well, I think that's why I enjoy it so much. And Thomas Gordon was nominated twice for the Nobel Peace Prize based on this work.
Wow, that's great. That's great. Before we let you go, is there anything you want to promote? Is there a website or email address that you would like to get out there, so if people wanted to see you
If
or
they
go to your workshops or
wanted to see me, I'm located in New York, but I also travel. This year I gave a workshop in Atlanta, and I've given, I will travel, but I'm based here in New York. And if people go Google my name, they'll find me, Judy Pardo. You can also go to gordontraining.com, which is a wonderful resource, Gordon Training. You can get newsletters from them. They have a blog. There's tons of information. It's really very, very wonderful, very interactive, the website at gordontraining.com. And I have my own website, which is villageparenting.com. So there are lots of ways to reach me, but if you forget everything else, Gordon Training is the one, because they'll know about me and all the other instructors around the country, because it's throughout the country and throughout the world. I actually met someone this summer who was from Holland giving workshops.
Wow,
yeah.
That's great. All right, well, Judy, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been a real pleasure. If it's not obvious already, I can't recommend enough to the listeners to, go get the book P.E.T. Go, attend a workshop. Go to gordontraining.com. Go to villageparenting.com. It's fantastic stuff there, and not just for parenting too. I know that, like you had said, Gordon Training has programs for teachers, and they have one that's leader effectiveness training, which
teachers, it's women, it's
right.
As we're saying, it's communication, so that's for everyone, right?
And it's very effective and easy to do. I mean, it starts paying back right away. I can attest to that.
Again, simple. It takes work. It's easy, and for some people not so easy in the beginning, because you're learning a new skill, but definitely worthwhile. I know it's changed my life for the better immensely. So that's why I'm such a big advocate. But I wanted to thank you and also Steve for this opportunity. I really enjoyed listening to your podcasts, and I really appreciate the chance to share PET with the greater population.
All right. Okay. Again, thank you so much, and thanks for your kind words. And yeah, we'll thanks for being a guest on Two Beers with Steve, Judy.
Thank you.